It's Friday, December 22nd, 2023, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. Congress and the Pentagon are battling over a legal requirement to create a joint military task force in the Pacific. The lawmakers say the military is slow-rolling the mandate with a lesser force. Bill Gertz supporters in Congress argue the plan is a first step in what lawmakers from both parties expect will be a multinational task force under the Indo-Pacific Command. Congress has yet to see the report, and the Indo-Pacific Command has set up a joint task force in the island chain of Micronesia, a lesser force that critics say falls far short of the mandate for a joint warfighting unit. A provision of last year's National Defense Authorization Act called on the Hawaii-based Indo-Pacific Command to create a joint force headquarters as an operational command by October 2024. This provision also required the Pentagon to report to Congress on plans for the joint force headquarters by June of this year. President Biden was willing to negotiate with some of America's adversaries, so it comes as a head-scratcher to Republicans on Capitol Hill that he's been reluctant to do the same with them. Jeff Murdoch reports it took the brink of a default to bring him to the table on debt negotiations this year, and he refused to deal with Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville, who was delaying military promotions to try to force the administration to negotiate over the Pentagon's policy facilitating abortions. More recently, the president sat out negotiations on border security, ultimately sinking chances this year for his $106 billion spending bill for Ukraine in its war with Russia. The White House finally engaged and began making concessions as the clock ran out for Congress, but a deal didn't materialize before lawmakers headed home for the holidays. Calls for Harvard President Claudine Gay to resign are mounting as claims of plagiarism over her past writings build up. Valerie Richardson reports Gay has been accused of 41 instances of failing to give proper credit in 7 articles over 30 years, according to the latest tally by the Manhattan Institute. The 7 published writings in question represent more than half of the 11 articles listed on her resume, a thin record of scholarship for the president of one of the nation's most prestigious universities. Gay has submitted 4 corrections to 2 of her articles after an independent review found a few instances of inadequate citation. Harvard said a recent review found no violation of Harvard standards for research misconduct. China is looking for diplomatic support farther afield as relations with its nearest neighbors deteriorate. Andrew Salmon reports high-profile clashes have played out in disputed waters off of the Philippines in recent weeks. Chinese Coast Guard ships and maritime militia rammed and fired water cannons at Philippine vessels. The two have clashed repeatedly over China's aggressive sovereignty claims in the South China Sea. And finally, polls suggest black men are drifting away from the Democratic Party, and philosopher Cornel West attributes it to hypermasculinity. Seth MacLachlan reports West, who is running against President Biden as an independent, says the president is slipping in polls in part because he can't compete with former President Trump in that metric. That's one theory among many as political analysts try to explain Trump's attraction from members of a voting bloc that used to be considered Democrats' most reliable. Biden won 92% of the black vote in 2020. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Washington Times in your favorite podcast app. You can also find us on social media at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo, wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas.